Hey all, here OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the Onyx Boox Poke5. This is their most entry-level e-reader / e-ink tablet running on a full version of Android, so you're able to download additional APKs like on smartphones or conventional tablets, except it has a monochrome black and white e-ink screen, which makes it a lot more visible when you're pointing it under more bright sunlight, reading outdoors, for instance. Very similar to a piece of paper, so the brighter that it gets, it's actually more visible, or if you are in really dark environments, there is also a built-in front light or glow light, and this thing is a little bit more versatile compared to a standard Amazon Kindle, which is why we can technically call it a tablet, because it's not a lockdown proprietary operating system like what Amazon gives you, whereas on the Poke5, if you wanted to, you can also leverage other Google apps, such as checking out your email, as well as leverage other utility tools, plus download other reading apps that might not be available on a default Kindle. That being said, it is a kind of apt comparison because both of these are respectively the entry-level models from Amazon as well as from Onyx. And so side by side, we can really tell that the Boox Poke5 has a more sleek design. It still is a 6-inch device, but it's substantially smaller in footprint thanks to slimmer bezels here on the front, not to mention the thickness as well, making it one of the most lightweight 6-inch e-readers that I have tested to date. This one retailing for $170, which is interesting because they have another compact e-reader, also 6 inches, called the Palma, that's been gaining some traction lately, but this is more like a smartphone form factor, but it retails for around $300, actually quite expensive for what it is. This is nearly half the price. So if you're on a tighter budget, the Poke5 is actually kind of an interesting option. You can still hold it pretty comfortably with one hand, although it's tougher to slide into a pocket because of the wider aspect ratio of the screen. Again, it's still 6 inches, but a more conventional 16:9, like other Android tablets and previous gen iPads, versus the more 2:1 narrow screen of the Palma, and perhaps slightly more comfortable if you're reading back PDFs, things like textbooks, which require a bit more width. But obviously there's a couple of compromises that Onyx had to make to hit a lower price. Case in point, the Poke5 doesn't have any physical buttons that you can press on for turning pages in a book, unlike the Palma, which can leverage the volume rocker for turning the page if you don't want to use the touchscreen. In addition, the Palma does have a slightly faster processor. It's a octa-core Qualcomm chip compared to a quad-core processor inside of the Poke5. Also, the RAM is higher on the Palma, around 6 GB on the base model, compared to 2 GB on the Poke5, as well as 32 gigs of built-in system storage. But thankfully, that can be augmented by a microSD card slot located at the bottom edge of the device to expand the storage for additional books as well as other media content. Poke5 here does not come with built-in loudspeakers, so if you're playing back an audiobook or music in general, you have to connect to wireless headphones. It has Bluetooth 5.0 built in, which is good, compared to the Palma, though, does have a built-in loudspeaker of its own. The final difference, though, I would argue is not as important, in that the Palma does have a rear-facing camera for scanning in documents, but again, I think that's kind of a niche function on an e-reader to begin with. Primarily, you are just getting a slightly weaker processor, as well as a little bit less RAM and storage space, aligning with a price that's also halved compared to the Palma. Otherwise, the screen here is definitely quite beautiful to behold because it's the same quality panel as found on the Palma. It's a Carta E Ink Display with AG glass on the top, a capacitive touchscreen, and it has a 300 PPI resolution, or more specifically 1448 by 1072. And so text details look extremely sharp, as well as the contrast between the black as well as the white foreground, again, just looks like printed text. It is just a beautiful screen for reading in general. Thankfully, it's not an area where they cut any corners compared to their more expensive e-readers. Now, I'll also mention that in the box, aside from the e-reader, there is just a standard USB Type-C charging and data sync cable. By the way, the Type-C port at the bottom here also supports OTG, so if you plug in a thumb drive, for example, it can read it back directly from the e-reader, or you can even connect an external keyboard or mouse, in addition to having a ejector pin for the microSD card tray. And the only button on the frame here is just the power key at the very top, but it feels pretty responsive and clicky. And again, the entire thing is crafted out of plastic, but does still have a nice overall density to it. Feels quite premium as a whole, with this frosted glass finish on the front that is paper-like. Here's a final size comparison with a much larger e-ink screen device, being a Kindle Scribe, nearly 10.5 inches, similar to something like a Remarkable, so you can tell there's a huge difference in footprint. However, whereas the Remarkable and Kindle Scribe are suited for note-taking with stylus support, the Boox5 does not come with any pressure-sensitive stylus input. So you can use a passive stylus, but it's the same thing as using your fingers. That being said, again, a more compact reader like this is more suited for traveling as well as just reading in general because of how lightweight it is. And taking a closer look at the operating system, it is very similar to what we saw on the Palma, but that's not a bad thing. Overall, it's quite easy to navigate. There are tabs at the bottom corresponding to all applications. Some standard utility tools like a clock as well as stopwatch, timer can also be found. And just like on the Palma, there have been some optimizations done by Onyx to make the UI a little bit more easy to navigate. Using gestures, you can swipe up to go home, as well as pull up the control center for activating or turning off the front light, as you can tell there, in addition to the accelerometer. Screencasting is also built on in addition to kids mode, location services, and taking screenshots, even recording the screen can all be found here. And you can also swipe here on the left-hand side to pull up any notifications that you can also disable, as well as pull up on the left corner to instead change some of the screen properties, optimizing on the text clarity and the resolution, but you can also go into a higher refresh rate mode that will kind of prevent itself from blinking quite as much if you're scrolling through a web page, for example, or trying to watch an animation or quick video snippet. And there's also a power saving mode as well. The main tab here is going to be library, so you're able to check out any books and content that you have on the device, and it supports pretty much all the popular file formats, including EPUB, PDFs, Word documents, text, so on and so forth. And you can also go into your cloud drive if you have Wi-Fi turned on and check out content that you have in your Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, referencing those files as well. And jumping into a book here pulls open their default reading app, which does support pinch to zoom as well when it comes to rescaling the size of words on the page. And again, because of the 300 PPI sharpness, text is very clear even if you're looking at slightly smaller font sizes, as you can tell here. And the layout is quite similar to what we saw on the Palma. You're able to pretty quickly scroll back and forth between pages, and as you can tell there, the transitions between some of these text is still quite fast and fluid, even on the normal mode. There's not too much ghosting visible either, but you can change the, again, refresh frequency under more advanced settings. For instance, if you wanted to flash to completely get rid of any artifacts or ghosting after 5, 10, 15 page turns, so on and so forth, you can customize that. And that is because, again, e-ink is very energy efficient. It can actually sit persistently on the static image and not drain any power, well, at least if the front light is not turned on. And it only takes a bit of power when you are turning a page and the particles are getting rearranged. Which is why, just like on Kindles, if you are only doing things like reading, the battery here can actually last you for a very long time, in fact weeks, before you have to recharge it again. However, if you're doing more demanding tasks similar to on a phone, you have Wi-Fi turned on, the front light turned on, you're browsing the web, accessing other apps, then the power will drain much more quickly. In heavier use, lasting closer to about a day or two before you have to recharge it again. So depending on usage, the battery life will vary pretty dramatically, so just keep that in mind. Also, we can long hold on a certain word to reference its dictionary definition as well as pronunciation guide. We can also look up Wikipedia if we wanted to, and even go into a translation function into a secondary language, plus add a text annotation so that we can then reference this comment whenever we click on this particular tab. You can also tap on the bottom here to pull up additional contrast as well as font size that you can change for the book, as well as trigger a auto page turn function, which will again turn the page after, say, 5 seconds without you having to tap on it if you want it to just kind of flip by itself. So it's a pretty comfortable reading experience overall. You can also tap on this floating little ball that you can hide under more advanced settings if you're not using it. But you can tap here to pull up additional options, including taking a screenshot, as well as multitasking to jump back and forth between other open programs or clear out of the background RAM. The next tab over is going to be Store. This is the basic Onyx store, which only houses some classic books, so it's clearly not as exhaustive as the Amazon bookstore, where you have more modern works. Instead, all of the books in here have entered the public domain, so things like Shakespeare, for instance, that you can check out, but as a result, they are all completely free to reference if needed. It's a nice little extra, but again, you are able to download the Kindle app, as well as the Kobo app, Barnes & Noble app, since it is just a Android operating system. So again, you can bring in other books and content that you own if you are leveraging those other services as well. Now the next tab is going to be storage, so you're able to check out again how much memory is remaining. So I would definitely recommend using that memory card if you are storing more books as well as music content, audiobooks. And interestingly, one application that is found on the Poke5, which is missing on the Palma, is a built-in AI assistant tool. This is basically leveraging ChatGPT, and you're able to ask questions, read it back. Now, obviously on the Palma, you could just download the regular ChatGPT app if you really wanted to, but this is built in here by default. And the Poke5 does have a built-in microphone, so you can use voice input if desired. It's a neat little extra, and this is also the default keyboard. Quickly jumping through some other apps, this is the calculator. It is very minimalistic looking, and here's also a app store by Boox. So they give you a few other recommended reading apps in addition to news apps that you can download here if desired, but again, you can always load in any APKs of your choice. And the Boox Drop application is also found on the Palma, so you're able to load in content wirelessly by scanning the QR code with your phone. And then as long as your phone and the tablet here are connected to the same Wi-Fi network, you're able to transfer over files from your primary mobile device or even laptop over. A basic calendar here can also track what types of books you've been reading as well as your reading duration at different points in time, and you are able to add some notes or memos down below here as well, so you can actually jot them down just using your finger though, since again there is no actual stylus support, but the responsiveness of this capacitive touchscreen doesn't seem to be too shabby. A couple more Google apps, including Keep Notes, in addition to Google Translate, can also be referenced here, plus a recorder app. Since again there is a built-in microphone, you can capture those voice notes, although voice-to-text transcription doesn't seem to be available in this default voice recorder app. That being said, when you're taking a screenshot of a web page or maybe a quick note or memo, it can convert it to text in addition to save it as a PDF, as well as save it onto your cloud drive. So the screenshot function is interestingly enough more fully featured there. Otherwise, the general performance of the Poke5 I think is okay. It definitely feels a bit slower as expected compared to the Palma because of the faster processor and more RAM there. Primarily in that RAM department, since 2 GB is a little bit low here in 2024, if you're doing a ton of multitasking, such as reading a book, in addition to maybe having a browser tab also open, when you're jumping back and forth, it's likely that the app has to take a moment compared to more powerful devices, which can keep it in the memory and perhaps feels a bit more fluid there. It's definitely still serviceable considering the lower price point here, but you just have to expect to maybe wait a split second longer for some applications to load. But it still is usable enough if you have just a bit more patience and kind of temper your expectations. Here's also an example of web browsing, so you still have pinch to zoom support, and it automatically transitions into the higher refresh rate mode. Obviously, in a mode like this, you will have a bit more ghosting, but as a result, you can still scroll, and it doesn't look quite as distracting with the screen always blinking, for example, versus older gen E Ink devices. This is still a okay experience if you're looking back just a quick news article, such as this one from The Verge, actually looks quite legible and crisp, and the reception quality is also fair, I would say, because of the mostly plastic chassis, so I was for the most part not having any problems staying connected. And here's also an example of a moving animation or video, so you can technically go to YouTube as well, and it doesn't feel quite as choppy or slow as on, again, older generation units. That being said, it obviously isn't going to be as enjoyable as on a regular LCD or OLED screen, pushing higher refresh rates and of course with color as well for more vibrancy, but still impressive enough on such a low-cost unit that it is technically working there. And the launcher also provides you with a freeze function, so if there are certain apps you haven't been using for a longer period of time, of say weeks or months, it will quote-unquote freeze it to clear up some of the system memory. It's a function that's also found on newer iOS versions as well. Now here's also a quick example of some other apps that we loaded in, including Webtoon. So scrolling up and down still is decent enough, I would say. You can also pause for a moment for the entire thing to refresh and kind of snap into focus, getting rid of any ghosting, or do a manual page refresh using the button here as well. Offers a pretty beautiful looking contrast compared to some Kaleido 3 color E Ink screens, which does give you again a bit more vibrancy if you're looking at comics perhaps, but it also tends to make the whites also a bit more grayish, as you can tell, whereas this one here is almost paper white in its appearance. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the Boox Poke5. Again, the most entry-level e-reader / e-ink tablet from Onyx here, and all things considered, I am impressed with, again, that screen primarily being very high quality. The build is also surprisingly slim, very lightweight, but also feels quite premium. By the way, there is support for an optional magnetic cover, which is not included in the box, but you can pair it with it, and the screen will automatically turn on and off if you have the lid closed or opened up using the folio, if you are interested in just adding a bit more protection. Again, there are a couple of corners that they had to cut to reach a lower price point, primarily with the processor and RAM just being a bit lower, but all things considered, because you're using more simple reading type apps anyways on here, I wouldn't say it's necessarily as big of a deal breaker as it would be on a regular tablet or smartphone. Sure, it would be nice to have slightly faster internals, maybe in the next generation revision, but all things considered, it still is a usable experience thanks to the software optimization from Onyx. As long as you're able to, again, temper your expectations, wait for just a beat longer for things to initially open, not bad, all things considered, from a software perspective. So you can check out more details if interested in the links down below, but for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Onyx Boox Poke5.